This episode of Beyond the Brown and Gold briefly references an occurrence of sexual assault. Please listen at your discretion.
Hey, it's Rob Lightfoot, proud two-time alum of Rowan University.
And I'm Jessica Kennedy, also a two-time Rowan alum. And you're listening to
Beyond the Brown and Gold.
Rowan Radio 89.7 WGLS FM presents Beyond the Brown and Gold, a show that highlights the lives and memories of Glassboro State and Rowan University alumni. Now, here are your hosts, Rob Lightfoot and Jessica Kennedy.
On today's show, we have a super special guest coming off hot from commencement week.
Yeah, she just had a speaking engagement.
Yes, we have Janine Frisbee LaRue, a 1974 Glassboro State grad, in studio with us today, and she's just the best.
I know you. So you know Janine better than I.
Yes,
but I knew her and I were gonna. I knew her and I were gonna hit it off.
Yeah,
she had an Apple Watch. She had an iPhone. I mean, I just knew right away.
She's super cool. She's using all the platforms. She's super like, let me pull this up on LinkedIn.
She's answering her phone during the entire interview. Was just able to answer do 19 things at once.
She's a multitasker. I mean, she's had lots of experience. 40 years in public service. She was an educator. Yep. She's an advocate, a lobbyist. Right now, she's senior vice president of the Kaufman Zeta Group. She works for Moxie Strategies.
She volunteers here. She volunteers
everywhere, here, there, and everywhere. Yeah. That's where you can find Janine. And now you can find her on Beyond the Brown and Gold. So, Janine, we've been trying to get you on the podcast for quite a bit of time. I've been stalking a little bit.
What's been keeping you away?
I have been a very busy woman. There's a lot going on in my life. I'm now the senior VP of one company. I'm the executive VP of another firm, a huge launch that we have done, a branding firm. And of course, the last year I've been really helping to care for my twin brother, who also graduated from Rowan. And in his last 7 weeks of life, he lived with me.
Oh, wow.
And passed away a couple of months ago. So it's been a very hectic year, fulfilling year, sad year.
Yeah.
But we're still here.
We'll give you a pass then.
Yeah, at least it's not us.
Yeah, that's fair.
It usually is.
No,
but not in this case.
It wasn't you guys this time.
Okay.
Well, thanks, Janine. We appreciate it. Well, you've also had a very busy last week. So we are kind of catching you on the tails of being the commencement speaker for College of Ed. So let's talk about that. What was that like for you?
That was literally, I think, maybe more than the dream of my life. I, as you know, I graduated 50 years ago and never really thought about a centennial. I mean, who thinks about a centennial, when you're that young? And the day of my graduation, I finished my studies in 3 years instead of 4 because I wanted to get on with my life and I wanted to get a job so I could give my kids a better life. And so I was teaching. And as a teacher, you don't get vacation times, depending on the contract. Our contract called for 3 personal days. And if you use your sick time to do personal things because you've run out of personal days, and they find out that you weren't really sick, they dock you.
Yeah.
So I talked to my union rep, and I said, my commencement's coming up in May because I finished my coursework in August, but now they tell me that I actually march in May of 75. I want to go to my commencement. And he said, well, you might want to talk to the principal. I don't think they'll let you off. Said, because you've used your 3 personal days to care for your kids.
Oh, how dare you.
And so if you call in sick and they see that you
went to commencement,
you will be docked your pay, and I couldn't afford it.
Oh, my gosh.
So I couldn't march.
Wow.
And so when I was invited to be the commencement speaker, no one knew how important it was for me to lead in the centennial class, the 2024 class. It was almost like I was marching for my own commencement 50 years later.
So you got kind of emotional. They handed you the Medal of Excellence.
There were so many emotional moments for me. The only time I cried was the medal. Yeah. That no one, usually for things like that, they'll say, we'll be giving you the medal. I had no idea of anything.
Oh, they didn't tell you that?
Oh, no, I wasn't prepared for that.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know that.
No. When Provost Lohman And when the dean, said you got to come back up, I'm like, oh, they'll give me a bag of something or maybe some flowers. But when I'm looking at this medal and what it said, which was everything to me, that I wanted to make a difference in education, I had a moment. I said, I can't do the ugly cry, but
It
I'm
was a
real
cute
close
cry.
to
You
it.
did a good job.
Yeah, I had to do a little dab, but
It was beautiful.
That's a hard line they drew back in the day for not letting you come to your commencement.
they didn't care, because that's why they give you personal days. You got to save them up. So maybe if I had developed a cough and got better by 3.
That would have been different. Take us back to what brought you to Glassboro State. Because you were not a non-traditional student, right?
I was a non-traditional student. Many people, in fact, I'm in the middle of writing my memoir now, and it should be out in a couple of months. I am a survivor of rape, and it was very, very important to me to get married as a virgin. I was brought up by very religious parents, and when the rape occurred, as a virgin, I became pregnant from that event. And it was just so, it was so devastating for me. And so I married my childhood sweetheart. He wanted to give the baby a name, so he said, but the marriage didn't work out because we had dated all during high school, and I kept saying I wanted to get married as a virgin.
Yeah.
And he was very, very angry and didn't believe. Back then, nobody believed women were raped.
That's awful.
And so the first week of my class as a student, I began to feel really sick to my stomach. I thought I was, nervous because I was going to class, and I was 21 at the time. I went to the doctor, and he says, you're expecting your second child. So here I am the first week of class trying to come to Glassboro State College so that I could put my life together and get out of a bad marital situation and become a professional after such a devastating high school year, my senior year. And now the doctor tells me I'm having another baby.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, I can't win for losing. So the family kept saying to me, there's no way now you can go to college. And I said, now I have a real reason. And Glassboro State College will save my life.
Wow.
And so I graduated, I was an English major and a communications minor. And every semester, every session, this school was open. Intersession between Christmas and the spring break. They had the 2 intersessions, they called it. I took classes, all intersessions. I took classes every summer school, both sessions in summer school. I loaded up beyond the 18 semester credits during the regular semester. And I had a lot of mentors on this campus. A lot of the administrators were pulling for me, and they were just counting my credits. They're like, you're almost there. And I said, look, if they can you get me there so by the end of August, as school boards are making their decisions about teachers coming in September,
You had an
that
opportunity.
we can demonstrate to them that I'm done. And they had the letters all done up. And during that year, only most of the teachers, if you were an English teacher or a high school teacher, they were showing on 60 Minutes, they're flipping burgers at fast food places because there were too many teachers.
Teachers, yeah.
And everyone kept saying, oh my goodness, you're applying so late, because all of my peers had applied at the beginning of the semester. I didn't know if I was going to be done.
Yeah.
And I applied at Washington Township High School, Camden High School, and Pennsgrove High School, and their board meetings were all the same week. And I was hired by all 3
Oh.
boards.
Wow. Get out. So then was it an easy choice where you decided to go, or what went into picking where you were
I
going to go?
decided to go where it was most close to my family. I graduated from Salem High School, and I did a lot in Pennsgrove, so I chose Pennsgrove High School.
I don't think I
to
knew. My
teach.
husband grew up in that area. I don't think I knew that you were both from the
Wow, what
the
area?
Salem County parts. He grew up in Elmer.
Oh my
So-
goodness, that's where I had my son.
Yeah,
At
so-
Elmer Hospital. Yeah.
Upper Pittsgrove, an Upper Pittsgrove guy.
And here's what I've learned about that area is everybody knows each other's business.
Yeah, so I
Everybody.
can't believe I didn't know.
Everybody.
Everybody,
Yeah.
like you're like, oh, I know Stan. Like, oh, Stan so and so. I know his brother and his brother, and they just know every story.
Yeah.
about every
Which is
person
crazy
down
because
there.
there's a lot of land in that area, so they're not really like in
No,
most parts they're not on top
It takes
of
a
each
while
other.
to get somewhere. And I'll tell you something. After my commencement address, a gentleman came up to me, and he said, first of all, he said, you had most of us crying with your speech. And I'm like, well, that was not the point. I said, but living it was a tearful moment. And he said, you said Salem, when you said Mannington Township, he said, I just want to know, did you do anything at Salem High? And I said, well, yeah, we were the feeding school for Salem High. And he said, did you know Sam Venuto? And I said, that was my twin's coach.
Wow.
And he said, I am the successor to Sam Venuto.
Oh wow.
Small world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he looked, maybe he was in his 60s, so, he may be retired or whatever. He said, but I had to find you. He said, because Mannington Township, who talks about Mannington Township? I
Yeah,
said,
only
yeah.
got to be from that area,
Right.
right?
So talk to us about the education route you chose. What put you into that mindset?
Well, it was the professors. It was professors. I really wanted to major in music when I came here.
Yep.
I was a pianist, and I found out it just took too many hours in the practice rooms
Okay.
to really. And the chair kept saying, "No, don't give up." I said, "I've got to do something that I like, and I know it's easy and it's portable. I can do it at home."
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to major in English, and I selected Rose Glassberg, who was Dr. Glassberg was the chair of the department. She and I are the same height. And I'm like, you know what? I think I can relate to her. She seemed
Just
to
like I can relate to
people,
you,
know.
Jean. Yeah.
And I remember one course I had communications. It was the multimedia thing, and I came in, and as I told you, I was pregnant in February. So when the semester started for September,
Yeah.
I was
Like,
right.
oh.
The baby was due September 21st.
Wow.
And I walked in. I don't know if this professor is even still living. I'll never forget him as long as I live. I walked into Dr. Dennis Mercier's class. And is he still around?
Yes.
And I walked into his class, and he looked at me, and he said, he let me stay the whole class. And then he came up to me, and he said, Ms., at that time, my name was Thompson, Ms. Thompson. And I said, sir. And he gave me the book. He said, this is the book you're going to be using for the semester. And I said, oh, okay. And and at that point, without being pregnant, I was like maybe 105 soaking wet. So I'm real thin, but a big belly, great big afro, And he said, my wife just had a baby. And I said, oh, congratulations. He said, no, I do not want to see you in this classroom until you have had this child. He said,
Oh, wow.
He said, do whatever you got to do with this book. Write me something. You're good.
Wow, that's great.
And I was like, but he said, you're good.
Yeah, I got you. I got you.
I mean, I was like really, really
And you're
good.
like, thank gosh. Thank
And
gosh.
I read the entire book and stayed in touch with him, and I got to be in the class. And then I remember it was the Thursday. I had Dr. Glassberg on a Thursday, and I just loved her class. The English, the literature. I loved it, and I was so into it. And at the end of the class, she comes to my desk and she taps on the desk and she said, "You're done here," like that. And she said, "No, you're giving me heart palpitations."
At least these people.
I'm worried that your
all these-
water's going
at
to
least
break on the
professors
floor.
had like empathy.
Oh,
Yeah.
they really did back then. She said, you cannot come back here until you have this baby. She said, you're walking, and we were in Bunts. She said, you're walking up these steps. You're barely making it. She said, I'm fearful for you and everyone around
Oh,
you.
yeah.
Because they had me sitting right by the door, So,
In case you had to exit quickly.
Right. And so that Monday morning, I remember asking the nurse, I was in the hospital, my water had broken, and I said to the nurse, I said, can I have the phone, please? And I dialed the English department. I said, "Is Dr. Glassberg in?" And she got on the phone and she says, "What do you want?" Like that. It was so cute. And I said, "I'm in labor." She said, "Thank God."
Oh my God.
She is about, if she's still living in the last month, she's about 90 some now.
Whoa.
And I thought it was so funny last year, without the little eggheads on Facebook, I got an inbox and says, "Are you the woman who was in my class
no,
back in?"
get
And
outta
I
here.
said, "Dr. Glassberg." She said, "It is I." And so I'm in touch with some folks who still keep in touch
Wow.
with her. She's still living.
I love that they looked out for you because, that's important. And I'm sure you were pregnant. Like you said, you had a reason to go, but I'm sure it came
Yeah.
with its own set of, you already had a child and then you were
Right.
expecting a second, and you're taking on classes whenever you could.
All the time.
That's a
Well,
pretty full agenda that you had there. No wonder they were worried about you.
I
They're
would be
like, this
worried
poor
too.
woman can't catch a break.
Yeah, and when I say to people that I've become a walking billboard for the university, this university gave me hope because I had been accepted at so many colleges when the doctor told me that I was pregnant. And I was devastated that day in his office. He kept saying to me, "When was your last sexual experience?" And I'm like, "Doctor, I haven't had one." Because I was so naive.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that what had happened to me I was just really a naive 17-year-old.
Yeah.
And when I got
Sure, you
on
couldn't
this-
even imagine what happened had its own trauma and then
Exactly.
resulting in.
I mean, there was no love act there,
Right.
and it just the whole thing was crazy. And I come on this campus, and these professors, when I walked into my classroom, I was Janine. Mm-hmm. I was somebody. I wasn't this, because I just felt so dirty and so awful. They didn't have programs to sit and really talk about
Yeah.
sexual assault back then. And so to graduate from here and do so well over the last 50 years of my career and to be 74 next month and now starting a new company and still going, I'm grateful.
You're the youngest 74-year-old woman that
You
I know.
are. You are. So talk to us about your post graduation. You graduate, go to Penns Grove, and talk to us about your career.
Well, the career, because it was in the 70s, most of what I have done, I am the first and many times the only. So when they hired me at Penns Grove High School, they had never had a black English teacher. Because back in the day, most people, the boards and all, didn't think somebody black could teach English because they just thought of us as speaking differently. Mm-hmm. And so that was an amazing experience. I loved it. And while teaching, I got engaged in the NJEA union activities. And they had expanded their program where they were trying to bring in, at that time, they had never hired a black woman for anything other than a secretary or a mail clerk. And they had expanded their program to try to bring in more people of color to promote more white women, because white women weren't getting the promotions that they should, and to just diversify everything. So they brought me on as a lobbyist in the most visible position of the union. And I stayed there for a decade. It was an amazing career. At the end of that decade, Governor Florio wanted to put me on the Casino Control Commission. I thought it was kind of interesting to sit there, and all of the other commissioners, I was sitting there, I kept pinching myself. I'm like, is this really happening? The chair, Steve Persky, had actually written the bill that became law. He's a former senator. We had former Senator Jim Hurley. We had former Assemblyman Charlie Irwin, and former Senator Pat Dodd, who was the Senate President, and Janine Frisbee LaRue from Rowan University sitting there. It was the thrill. 5 years as a commissioner over all of the casinos in the state of New Jersey. I'm one of the few people. I did see Donald Trump's tax filings.
Yeah.
I never
Tell us
talk
more.
about what I saw, but I tell you, I did see them. And that was a beautiful career. And I left there at the end of my term and started a mentoring program up in the Newark area that is now the Boys and Girls Club of, Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Essex and West Hudson.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's existing today and thriving. And so from there, I went into healthcare with the St. Barnabas system, stayed with them for 10 years. Governor Corzine asked me to come in as a deputy chief of staff, and I ended that whole career at Rutgers University, where I developed their public affairs department that stands even today. And now I've been at the Zito Group now for 13 years.
So how does one? That's the most concise way anybody's told us about a 50-year career.
That is really, that was put in the pocket really
Hats
well,
off
Janine.
to you, Janine. Very good. But how did you go from being an educator to lobbyist? Like, what did that look like? Had you always felt like you needed to speak out? Been given the opportunity to help others? Like, what was kind of the catalyst for you making a move like that?
I learned about advocacy here at Glassboro State College. It was the aftermath of the 60s that I came here, and it was just that kind of free spirit. We were all going to fight the establishment. Mm-hmm. My group of friends here is a very diverse group of friends. I guess some people might have called me even a black hippie. I drove a Beetle. The Beetles that I bought, the little Volkswagens, they were all hoopties because I owned 3 of them, only because everyone that I bought was about ready to die when I bought them. I actually had the flowers all over my Beetles, and I just felt in the moment here on this campus that I was born to be a part of change. I felt it, and I got the energies from my professors where they made us think about change and the responsibility we have to the society. So it started right there. And when I applied for the job at Rowan, at NJEA, I have to be honest with you, that was in, 80? I have never applied for another job. All of what I told you, I never saw something like, oh, this position is open.
Right.
I'm going to go
People
for
came
it.
and found you.
People were calling me saying, we got a position coming up. Mm-hmm. We think you'd be a perfect fit. And and when I look back on my life, I'm like, how did it happen that way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's when I give a speech every once in a while. I know a lot of times folks talk about, you need a mentor to get ahead. And I say to folks, you don't really need a mentor to get ahead in your profession. You need a sponsor. People sponsored me. Mm-hmm. There were 4 or 5 people, most who did not look like me, were not women and were not people of color, who just kind of felt, we're going to call Janine, we think she'd be good for this position. Now, some might say, well, did it happen because you're black? Probably. Did it happen because you're a woman? Probably. Why, whatever reason it happened, the one good thing that I can say, every position that I have held, more women and more people of color followed me in those positions. So
You opened doors.
Open doors, sat around big conference tables with high back, leather backs and suede, where people could see we're human. Women and ethnic minorities really can walk and chew gum at the same time, and we're okay. We know how to be team players in the corporate world. We will do our research. We will get before a governor and represent hundreds of thousands of teachers and public employees well. And so I think that's how I did it. And I look back on my career now, and I'm just so thrilled that I didn't make any fatal errors. I just did what I thought was right.
What were the thought of your family and friends? I'm sure they didn't see. You didn't see this for yourself. They didn't see it either for you.
No. My mom was a preacher. She died at 50 years old of a brain tumor, and so she didn't get to see me. She died in 72, so she died 1 year after I came here. My dad died 4 years later at 62. He died the morning after my wedding. Had never been sick, just dropped dead of a heart attack.
Wow.
And both of them really did push all of us. If they had looked back on their kids, what we became, I mean, I have become, this statewide figure, in some cases even national. My twin, the way he worked through his sobriety, his 12 steps, 38 years, he never had a drink. He never had drugs. He stayed sober for 38 years, graduated on the same field where I spoke to that commencement, graduated with honors.
That's your brother Jim, right?
Yeah,
you graduated
my twin
different
brother.
times.
Yes, 20 years, and 20 years apart that he graduated after me. And then I have another sister who went to Rutgers. She became a really great attorney. Another sister who was a wonderful social worker. We came from a poor family in the country, and we all went to different types of colleges, but we all made it.
You're all very successful.
Yeah.
What was it like for you being the first woman of color in a lot of these positions? Was it intimidating? Did you feel a sense of empowerment? What was it like in a lot of those rooms where you might have been the first to sit?
Many, many times I felt the imposter syndrome. I would walk in and I would say to myself, okay, I'm listening to them talk about their vacation homes and their this and their that, and, of course, I was with the governor, I had dinner with the governor, and then I'm getting calls now, and Senate president and everybody, they're calling me, and I'm like, oh my goodness, you got to say everything correctly, Janine. You can't make any mistakes. And what I found in many of those rooms where I was the only one, people put their arms around me. There was always at least one or two people who would say, we're going to make sure she gets through the process. And that always made me feel really, really good.
She's a busy lady. She's gotten like 6 phone calls since she came in the studio.
The current governor now asking her to do something over there.
What is your most proud professional accomplishment or something that you lobbied for that you're just really proud of?
The most proud thing that I've done, and I want to bring it back, I remember the whole Gosekin and Johnson summit made such an impression on me. I was like, oh my goodness, all these people were coming, to Glassboro, New Jersey. And I didn't know at the time it's because they thought nothing really had happened here, and so it was safe. And I remember during the Clarence Thomas hearings and the way Anita Hill was put on trial for craziness that Clarence Thomas had done. And I was in Bally's in Voorhees at the time, looking at the big screen. I'm like, you know what? Just like the summit that was held at Glassboro State, we need a women's summit. We need a summit where women will get together and talk about issues that are very important to us. So I went to Now New Jersey, the then president. She still laughs about it. She said, Janine, you won't get more than 50 people to come to an event to just talk about women's issues. I said, well, will you at least say,
women love gathering. What is she talking about?
No, this was actually 1970. Well, it was back in, it's 30 years ago.
So you have to make phone calls and you got to send letters out. There's no more emails.
Oh, it was all of that.
Yeah,
all of that.
yeah.
And so I was determined. So I said, well, if you don't believe that it will be a hit, that's okay. Will you at least let Now sign on as a supporter? So I went women's organization by women's organization. Then I talked to Jim Florio, governor. And I said, Governor, I want to do this. And he said, we'll give you $15,000 seed money, and it can go through Division of Women, and we'll see what happens. Long story short, the first one was held at the Cherry Hill Hyatt. And the first person to register was a man. Former Governor Hughes' stepson, still a really big icon, Michael Murphy. He was the county prosecutor. And he brought 3 of the women in his office to come to the summit. He was the first one. 550 people for a 2-day event showed up for the first women's summit.
Amazing.
The second one we held again in Cherry Hill. 700 people showed up. So we outgrew Cherry Hill. I had to then move it to New Brunswick for the third one, and we had 1,000 people show up. When the summit was over, because Governor Whitman beat my governor, and she and I became very good friends. Afterwards, I endorsed her for re-election. But she said to me, she said, this women's summit, and I said, I know you're going to stop it. You're going to look at it as a Democrat thing. She said, no. She said, I'm going to ask you
thing,
if you will allow the state to rename it the Governor's Women's Conference.
Okay.
And it became the Governor's Women's Conference, and it got up to 2,600 people. It moved to the Convention Center in Atlantic City, and we had keynote speakers from Maya Angelou, Robin Roberts, Susie Orman. I mean, it was,
Wow.
I mean, I'm telling you right now,
Those are some big
you
names, yeah.
Google search it, it's amazing. So my first book will be about the road to the summit.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That sounds like the title.
Yeah,
Road to the Sun.
what is the
The
title? Do we
road,
know?
no, the road to the summit. And it's going to be the road to the summit, one woman's pain, journey from pain to victory. I think it's pain to victory that she put it in. I have a ghostwriter who's actually doing it.
And then
sounds
when are we
incredible.
expecting it out?
Probably by the end of the summer.
All right.
It's almost done. It's funny dealing with ghostwriters. She writes the stuff, you got to read through the manuscript, and you have AI, and it's so much easier than it was years ago. And then all the social media platforms, they do all of that. I don't have to worry about doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not. I don't think you're going on there on TikTok and doing like
I mean, we could put her on TikTok. She's cool.
Are we on TikTok?
No, Rowan alumni is not, but the university is.
So tell us about your SVP role. What the group does.
So the lobbying firm, I have a lot of clients that are either in higher ed, development, healthcare. I do a lot of healthcare work, and pretty much that's it. There's five clients that I deal with on a regular basis. So it means going into the legislature and begging people to vote yes on things we want, and trying to get them to kill things that we don't want. It's normally all about the money, as I'm sure
So my dad always says,
Follow
follow
the
the
money.
dollar bill.
Follow
That's
the
where you always
money.
find the answer, yeah.
But I give a lot of public speeches, and all of that, my own personal brand is helpful to the companies that I work with, because a lot of people know the name, and I have my own dress code. I have my little gray mohawk. I mean, it's a thing. It's a vibe, and that's the part that I'm enjoying about being in my 70s.
You are a vibe, Janine. I do. Janine, you're also a founding member of our Black Alumni Network.
Oh my goodness, that I love.
Yes, tell us more about that.
Yeah, the first one that was held over 10 years ago, when we all convened, it was really a lot of folks convened over at the Owl's Nest, and we found out while we worked through the process, as you know, that a lot of the folks who showed up never graduated from Glasper State. And that was a rude awakening for us, that as a group, as a people, we had to do more to come together as a village and also give back and help people of color who were going through the process on this campus to just be there in that moment. And during the pandemic is when I believe that we actually came together as a group and really became a family by finding other alum and every month having a themed Zoom. Sometimes a couple hundred people showed up, sometimes 70 or 80.
Yeah.
But just talking about their journey here at Glasper State College / Rowan University. What amazed me is, out of all of these folks we talked about, I was the oldest. And I said, this is kind of eerie to think about this journey. And almost all of these people are so much younger than I am. But then to think about how my alma mater, has changed the lives of thousands of people and nobody really talks about it. You know, my son graduated from Howard University, and you know, you see folks when you're in the audience and someone says Howard University, and all of a sudden you hear it throughout, H-U, you know, they got this whole thing. And many of the folks I know who look like me who graduated from Rowan, they just don't really talk about the university. And I think that Ruban has made a huge difference. And that centerpiece event that we have during homecoming, it now has, people look forward to that. They want to be in the room with folks who graduated from this great university called Rowan.
You're also engaged with our College of Ed folks.
Yeah.
You find some time to squeeze that into your schedule, huh?
She's always had a busy schedule. She's used to
Well,
it.
you know, it's funny. My good friend, Dr. Hendricks, Rochelle, when she was the acting commissioner of Ed and then became secretary of higher ed, she and I have bonded. And so she called me one day and she said, I'm going to ask you a favor. You're probably going to say no. And I said, all right. I said, well, you know, it's hard to say no to you about things. She said, well, Rowan, you know, the College of Education, that's all about your life. And I know that you love these things. And I want you to meet the dean. You two will really gel. Because we're starting this advisory. I'm like,
Great.
another highly paid board. I said to her, I said, Rochelle, how many times are you going to meet? Oh, only quarterly. Okay, only quarterly. And she said, yeah, it's going to be a big group of people. You won't have to worry about it. So I said, all right. You know, I met the dean, fell in love with her. I go to a few meetings, and I'm getting a text from the two of them. I'm like, this is not good. They're the same text. And now they want to have breakfast.
Oh, boy.
Would you be the chair? I'm like, chair?
You're like, no. I just wanted to volunteer.
Dean says, well, I'll co-chair it with you. I said, you know what? I will. And so it's been a beautiful experience. A lot of the other board members are people I've dealt with in my career over the decades. And that has been great, knowing that we can now acknowledge each other and what the journey, what we know about education, what we know what will and will not work.
There's a lot of diversity of education pieces in there. A lot of folks that come through different experiences, including some folks that don't even have educational backgrounds.
And what they're learning.
And what they're learning.
Why the business world needs to be at this table.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
retired from what, Verizon or AT&T?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really fascinating.
So what are you doing when you do have some free time?
Yeah, because do you have free time? Do you have free time?
Well, the problem is I haven't had enough free time.
Yeah.
You know, I go to Atlanta. I visit my daughter. Spend a lot of time with my dog. I have a little Yorkie. I love jazz. You know, I'm getting ready to get a keyboard so I can get back to
I was going to
playing.
ask, do you still play piano? I was going to ask.
Well, obviously, I would hope that it's like riding a bike, but it's not really that great. So for Mother's Day, I said, my grandson brought his keyboard, and I said, oh, let me play around with this. I was playing around with it, and my daughter was recording. I didn't know it. And I looked at the recording. I said, oh, man, I really screwed that song up. So what I did was I posted it on Facebook. I looked last night. As of last night, it had over 1,000 views.
Wow.
I said, oh, no.
Oh, no.
You know?
Nobody knows you messed it up.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
okay.
they do. Some were like, keep your day job.
So what are you hoping that you are doing next? I mean, Janine, you've had such a career.
I have my own podcast, which is a video podcast.
Tell us.
I did not know this.
No, it's called, you've got to Google search it.
All
It's
right.
LaRulis Cafe.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
You
cute.
know? And what we say is, come on in, let's talk about it. That's the
I
that's
knew you
the
were too
slogan.
comfortable with this.
When
You
are we going to be? When are we going to come to the cafe?
Oh, trust me. I would. In fact, I'm looking at this equipment because I'm getting ready to have. Well, I've opened up my actual studio at in Hamilton, New Jersey, and Melissa came in, and she actually from the foundation.
Yeah.
She actually saw it. She said, "This is amazing." So I have my, I have my equipment and everything. I don't have a board that big, but we're getting there. But I'm actually developing a partnership with Trenton High School.
Okay.
They gave me a tour of their communications department. And oh my goodness, their podcasting center, their TV production center, and they're only using it once a week internally because nobody knows it's there.
Yeah.
So,
Or how to use it.
or how to use it. So I've been using StreamYard.
Okay.
And when you go up on my website, you'll see a lot of the interviews that I had done. I haven't done anything recent. I think the last thing I did was when my twin brother passed away, and that got a lot of views. I don't know why on YouTube it doesn't get, there it is. YouTube, it doesn't get a lot of views, but when I live stream on LinkedIn and Facebook, a lot of people come on. I mean, it's become very, very popular.
Well, I'm really glad that we finally got you, and right on the heels of everything you
Yes.
did this past week for commencement, because
It's a real high.
Yeah. Well, speaking of high, they had you on a little platform on the
Yeah, they
on the
did.
stage.
And
It's
it's
so
funny.
cute.
Everything they were asking me is, they kept asking, Miss LaRue, is there anything else you need? And I kept saying, is the stool there? Is the stool there? So when they called my name,
Those things are really high.
Yeah, they
the platforms.
are.
Yeah.
well, what happened with me though, no one told me it was built in.
Oh.
So they called my name and I stood up and I'm looking at the podium and you could see the provost looking like, you know,
Where's your stool?
because I kept asking all morning, you know, make sure the stool's there. And then all of a sudden I see
magic stool.
I see this little half smile in the wood.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, let me put my finger in here real fast.
Yeah.
And it slid out. I'm like, bet.
Somebody should have briefed you on that.
But I love you have like a little timeline, and then look where it starts, right there. Glassboro State College, very
Absolutely.
cool. Very cool.
That's where it all started.
yeah, that's amazing.
Wow.
That's very cool.
Well, from one petite girl to another. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank
and
you
for
for
being
having
here
me.
and for all that you continue to do and for being that walking billboard for Rowan.
That's what we do.
Jess, that interview could have been like an hour and a half if we really had the time.
I know, but she's such a good communicator
Yeah.
because she was able to take, you know, so
She
many
summed it up.
years of history and just, like tie it in a bow. That's a talent because she's done a lot of things.
It was almost like we asked her what she had for dinner, and then she was able to kind of put it together in all that brief time.
I know.
But what a story for her to come back, and what a story for her to be such a great ambassador of the university from Glassboro State College all the way through now to the Rowan University, era.
We didn't want her to leave. We were so grateful to have Janine as part of the Glassboro State cloth that makes up
Yep.
this beautiful university that we have celebrating our centennial year. Can you believe the centennial year is almost
It's
over?
almost over.
That is so wild. That flew by. But it's alums like this that really were such a rich part of the fabric of this university, and we're so glad to have them in studio.
You've been listening to Beyond the Brown and Gold on Rowan Radio 89.7 WGLS FM. You can find more episodes on your favorite podcasting platforms by searching for Beyond the Brown and Gold or Rowan Radio On Demand.